Hey everybody, I am back with the legendary David Wolfe. Hi, how are you, David?
Fantastic. Literally having the best day ever.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, you're up at your chocolate factory playing Willy Wonka today, so you've got.
I normally have to wear this, so.
Ah, it's amazing. That's great.
You got me looking reasonably okay without it, but that's what I normally have to do.
So just for our audience to know, we shot the interview with David over for the movie, which was so much fun, and we had a lot of wonderful conversations. And you guys will see a bonus feature of him cruising around showing us what local herbs there were in my woods, right? It wasn't like this was, it's not like we prepped you and said, hey, you're gonna have to go research and find out what's out here. You just start cruising and you knew food. And there was food within 20 feet of where we were standing. And so I really want to talk about that in light of, the victory gardens and all the stuff that we're going to be doing. Because, I'm doing my garden and tore out our lawn. You're a big forager and wildcrafter. So I'd love to just talk about how food is everywhere and how we've lost that knowledge.
Well, I think one thing that got in early into my life, and it's been a guiding light ever since, is that wild food has more energy in it. It has more vitality in it. It has more vigor, and it makes you healthier faster. Now, somehow somebody taught me that 20-something years ago, and it stayed with me, and it's just become a guiding light in my life, and it's true. And that's been my experience. So that's the thing that drives me. It's like, if I can get food that's local and free and better for me, it's on. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and you learn this stuff. I mean, you're like an encyclopedia, but I mean, you started somewhere, right?
Right, and I actually started, I remember, with an herbalist in Southern California maybe 25 years ago, and he basically said, hey, Southern California is easy. There's like 40 edible wild plants right around your local neighborhood here, and that's it. So 40 is not that much, and all you need to do to get started is know one. That's all you need to know is just one. So it might be dandelion. It might be wild lettuce. It might be one of my favorites in Southern California is the lemonade berry. It tastes like lemonade juice. It's really a good tart berry. It's like a candy. It's wonderful. And you just know a few of those, and pretty soon you're off to the races.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much more fun when you're hiking to find something that not only do you ID and have some sort of relationship with, but is also feeding you back. I mean, finding a berry and eating it and being out there with your kid and knowing that it's the right one and not poison, like all the things that, you get confidence with. It's what a great feedback loop with nature.
It's so great, and you just feel connected. And this is another thing for me about foraging and wildcrafting is some people meditate, some people do yoga, and I'm into meditation, I'm into yoga. But the real core connection that I have with the source of everything, with God, really happens for me when I'm out foraging in a forest or out foraging in the local canyons of Southern California or wherever I'm at the time. That's when I feel the most connected.
Can we talk about that? Because it's such a primal thing, and it's such a powerful thing. And if someone's listening to this and they're like, I have no frame of reference to that. Like, how do we introduce that? I mean, you're talking about, you're connecting this with, God himself type of thing. Like, this is that holy for you. What makes it so special? How does it work to get into the back of your psyche and make you even make a statement like that?
Well, I think one thing is that when you get out into wild nature and you really have a knowledge of wild nature, you connect to the lineages of all the people who've lived there before. Native Americans who came before us in the North American continent, for example. And so you feel connected to them and you understand them and you have a feeling that you're not isolated and alone, but you're part of a long lineage of beings that have come before. And that gives you a sense of peace and well-being. And then as well, when you're in nature, you're surrounded by a healthy symphony of energies. It's fractal. Things look fractal, so things look good. It's friendly to your eye. There's a feeling of just a nice, gentle feeling that you're connected to the greater symphony of nature, which is a lot different than a city environment. And so you start to feel that it's very important. In fact, this is one of the things I recommend in my seminars, at least get 1 hour every day to connect back into those fractal patterns and that symphony of what nature is, versus some of the disharmonies that occur in cities where there's a building there and a building there and there's no dirt. It's a concrete jungle.
Let's talk about that fractal harmony real quick, because that's some really powerful stuff, and that's some of the most amazing stuff that's coming out right now, looking at the Fibonacci sequence and the growth of life itself and how, you know, urban planning missed that. So can you elaborate a little bit more, because that's great stuff.
One of the great books I read in my life is Chaos. I think it was by James Gleick, and it was about Mandelbrot and the Mandelbrot set and the discovery of fractal geometry and the discovery of fractal mathematics, and that plants follow fractal mathematics. So you could actually identify, for example, in the more primitive plants like ferns, it's actually has a lower fractal number than the more advanced fruit-bearing trees, like an apple tree. And so each tree has a number in a fractal geometry. That really changed me around, because then I started to understand the harmonics of nature, the mathematics of nature, which isn't 1 + 1 = 2. It's actually between 2 and 3 dimensions. So, for example, the way an apple tree fills up space, it doesn't completely fill 3-dimensional space, but it's not 2-dimensional either. So it's some number in between. It's like a 2.78.
Wow.
Yeah. So you start to understand what the fractal number of the tree is, or the plant, and so you start to get a feeling like, oh, a ginkgo tree, that's been here for a very long time. It has a low fractal number, like a fern does. Whereas a very advanced tree, like a fruit tree or a nut tree, fills up 3-dimensional space more efficiently.
That's incredible. And deep down, you and I and everyone else listening to this has an innate intelligence to sense this and see this, kind of like in italics, see this as a shaman would, and feel at ease or feel some connection with the plant and feel like we're home. Whereas if you're walking down, say, 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, and, you know, things are just kind of thrown up there for convenience or mercantile, you know, sake, none of that has any life exuding in such a way.
Right. It's basically an information field, right? Nature is a very deep information field. There's a lot there. There's a lot going on. Whereas, you know, the 3rd Street Promenade has a lot going on, but it doesn't have that depth of the information field. And so, again, that's why we recommend just 1 hour a day in nature. It's like music. You don't need to understand music or play an instrument to feel the magic of it. That's what nature is doing for you. You don't need to understand about it. All you have to do is be there. Okay,
so let's go devil's advocate right now, because I heard that just pop up in the consciousness of some listeners that are watching this, is who the hell has time to get out to nature for an hour a day, right?
That brings us right back to what we're talking about. You're saving time because it's your workout and you're picking food. So for me personally, I'm very oriented because I only have 24 hours, just like everybody else. So I try to fit as much stuff into those 24 hours and stack everything up. So I'm doing like 3 things instead of just walking in the park. I'm actually getting a bunch of other stuff done too. Plus, you know, I may even have my phone with me or something, so I could be texting somebody in an emergency situation. Although most of the time when I'm at home, I leave the phone at home and I don't go into the forest with it.
Oh, fantastic. So I was just telling Dave when yesterday and the day before, we had, you know, you guys are going to see a bunch of videos of me tearing out our back lawn and putting in raised beds, and I moved like 5,000 pounds of dirt yesterday. And it was like putting the work back into workout. I mean, work is exhausting. Like, you don't need a gym if you're out there doing a home garden, if you're out there foraging, and that's kind of your workout, and that's what you get, right?
That's exactly right. And a friend of mine and I, we just have this very strong ethic of exactly that. Like, I'll go to a gym when I'm in a city and I can't get to wild nature and can't get the normal workout that I get from running around the forest. But when I'm at home, I don't go to gyms because I got work to do. I got to shovel. I got to, you know, fill up dirt. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to move this plant. I got to dig a hole over there. I got to go into the forest and get buckets of this stuff and bring it back. I got to carry water. You know, I got to chop wood. So it's the original workout, and it's the best workout because you're actually accomplishing something other than just you getting in shape. You're actually forwarding. For example, we have to chop wood because our house is on a wood burning stove. You know, I live in the far north, so we warm our house in the winter with the wood that's going in that fireplace. So I'm getting a benefit because I'm getting a workout, but I'm also using that wood.
Yeah, and that ties into the stuff we talked about in the movie with just the primitive survival needs. You know, what do we need? Food, water, shelter, and fire, and everything else is a want. So here he is doing this exercise, quote unquote, which is actually his procurement of what he needs for shelter and for the survival of himself and his family, and it's just power. That's primal, right? Like that's tied into deep DNA.
Right. Yeah, it's a deep thing, and just to know how to survive, like where I'm at, you know, in the winter, it's an intense winter. It goes on for 6 or 7 months every year, and you have to prepare, and it has to be a lot of it is your own just wits. You got to have your own wits and muscles behind it, so you get the wood all stacked up and ready to go. You've got enough, you know, stuff in the house to start the fires. Like, you know, I go out and pick little pieces of twigs and stuff like that, dry them out, and then I have them ready for the whole winter long. Just little stuff like that, and you just feel at ease and in comfort with your environment because you know how to survive there without electricity, without, you know, the electric bill or whatever, you know. Without even, another thing that we do too is we have spring water in our house. So we're not on the tap water, we're not on a municipal water system, we're on a natural water system. So I have to know every part of that system, and if any part of it breaks, I have to be able to fix it on the spot, because in the winter the pipes will freeze and then I really got a problem.
That's, you know, so you have like kind of a self-sufficient, virtuous circle there of life. What does that do psychologically to finally know that you're handling all of the elements that make up the circle of survival, if you will, and that you are kind of free from all the like societal constraints of, you know, well, if we shut off your water, you die. Like, how does that work, and how long did it take you to kind of set up that system for your own personal life?
Great question. It's taken me many years to get to that place where I feel self-sufficient and I can survive, that I can survive in very extreme climates and know what to do. And it's a step-by-step thing. First of all, you have to have a passion for it. You got to have a passion for foraging. You got to have a passion for building, you know, wildfires. You got to have a passion for survival skills. And if you have that passion, it can be really a lot of fun because you have a confidence. You start to develop a confidence and a knowledge. It's a real knowledge, and it's a useful knowledge, and you can share it with other people. So I think it's really powerful, and I think it's wonderful too because it brings you a deeper sense of peace and ease.
You know, what's funny is, so we're talking to a gentleman who is busy as anyone is, right? So David Wolfe's going to be down in Southern California and then go to Europe for a couple months. I mean, he's on airplanes and jet setting around because, you know, you're a name and a celebrity and you've done this stuff for a long time. So it's not like you're a stranger to technology. It's not like you've dropped out of the world, but you choose to live in a certain way as often as you can, because that's where you tap into your vitality. That's where you get your mojo.
Totally, and it's exactly that. I mean, I'm amazed you just said that because that's actually true. Because people ask me, they're like, "How in the world do you get on a planes and go 6 weeks over to Europe, and then you're all of a sudden over there, then you're over here, and then next thing you're up there, and then down there, and then like the other night on Saturday night, or was it? Yeah, it was Saturday night. We just drove all night. We went and we watched the UFC fights with my friend Bua, and then instead of going to bed that night, we just drove through the night up to Northern California and slept in the car in turns. You know, we're just doing that kind of stuff. Where does that all come from? It comes from whenever I'm in wild nature, especially when I'm home, I draw in the energy from the environment. For example, I have a great lake up at the top of the hill where I live, you know, up in the cold up there, and during the season when you can swim in it, when it's not frozen, it's amazing. It's very cold, but you get in there, you come out, you feel charged, your circulation is going, and you're ready for the next challenge.
That's beautiful. Someone listening to this will have a memory of this because we've all hopefully gone camping and gone out and had some sort of access to this. But we think that that's there, and over here in my busy, urban, stressed out life, I don't have time for that. You know, maybe I'll book a camping trip this summer. And so how do you bring the nature principle home if, say, you live in Manhattan or Chicago or just, you know, say Detroit, where it's just too cold to get out of your house a lot of the time? So how can you connect? I mean, are we talking house plants? What do we do?
I like house plants. I have over 100 house plants in my house, and I'm very much into sprouting too. I think sprouting is a really important skill to have. It connects you to the magic of growth. And that's really what plants are able to do, is they connect you to the magic of growth and the magic of nature. So if you are in Detroit, you're in a New York City apartment, start sprouting, growing your own plants. Aloe veras are really nice because you can actually eat them. You can grow them right there in the windowsill and actually use them as food. And sprouts are great. I'm particularly a fan of broccoli sprouts due to their high level of sulforaphanes and some of the interesting things they contain. So that's what I did when I lived in New York City.
Yeah, and so you had your sulforaphane, you had your wonderful, I mean, obviously you're not feeding yourself off of broccoli sprouts exclusively, but it's a nice way to kind of tether and connect back with nature, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, exactly, and it's food that you grew with your own hands, and that's such a great feeling. And by the way, definitely, there's no question about it. When you grow the food yourself, it tastes better. And I'm sure it's better for you, but it tastes better, and that's really interesting.
So let's get a little hippy-dippy for a second, because I think we could here, is what is it about growing food with your own hands and the love and the attention and the care that you put into it that creates this maybe virtuous circle of life that comes back? Because every good farmer knows that the hand-grown produce is just so nourishing and so fulfilling. And people who have not experienced that just don't even know what the hell we're talking about.
It's, well, what you tap into when you're farming, you're gardening, you're eating your own food, is you're tapping into an intangible that we're not normally aware of. And there's a lot of emptiness in our food because it's not grown by hand and there's not a whole lot of love going into it. And so that makes us hungry. It makes us want more food. It makes us feel like we're never satisfied. And then all of a sudden you start growing your own vegetables and you eat it and you're completely stuffed, totally full, and you start to tune in on that intangible thing that's missing. Now, we could put names on that. Definitely homegrown food has more minerals in it. It has more nutrients in it. But is that the answer? And I don't think it's the answer. I think it's your own love that's in it. I mean, I think that love is a nutrient. In fact, we know that from studies, that love is a nutrient. If people pray over chocolate and they love it, and the other chocolate is just left alone, and then they mix them together and they pass it out to an audience, and then everybody reports on what their experience was, the chocolate was prayed over and loved, actually will create a better effect on the audience.
Huh. That's fantastic. So that's we're getting into Emoto's work and quantum fixation and all sorts of crazy stuff that's really explaining what the ancients have been talking about for a very long time.
I think it's because, you know, we're so right or left brained and we're so right into, you know, everything's got to be material, that we forgot about one of the most primal things, which is love. That the way you love your plants, the way you love your family, the way you love your house, the way you love your land is felt, and it responds. And that to me is really, that's what we're getting at about this connection to spirit and source, is that when I walk out in my front yard, I've been in my house for 10 years and it's 200 acres, and you know, I've got this little plot that I've been working with, you know, it's about 5 acres for all those years, doing all kinds of interesting things. The feeling that I get in the middle of the summer there is literally, it's a feeling of ecstasy. It feels like an ecstatic thing comes through the ground, right through my body. And I've noted it for a lot of years. And this summer I was like, it's real. I mean, I'm feeling that for sure. And so this is something we never even heard about. Nobody ever talks about this stuff. What a great feeling. I mean, you talk about a high, that's the best high going.
So it's like you're paying love forward into life that's now blossoming and giving it back to you, and you're standing in this field and you're just getting inundated with love, and it's ecstatic. It's
an ecstatic feeling. It's like, it's really, really special. It's the reason why I would never trade that place in for a million years or for anything. I put so much into that place, my own blood, sweat, and tears, that it's now I get it back, and when I'm out there, especially in the summer, it's just like, oh, this is so good.
This is paradise. And there's a big piece to that, in that you have spent that 5 acre plot, you've spent so much time putting love into that soil and establishing a healthy microbiome as well, right? And I'd love for you to speak to that, because people don't get how the soil is your interface and your connection with all the life and the life that you spring forth. So I'd love to hear, because I know you do a lot of kind of chaos gardening, but I'd love for you to kind of get into how that works.
Okay, well, the soil is really, it's exactly the analogy or metaphor of our own probiotics in our body, our own friendly bacteria. And so the soil is going to determine how healthy your fruit is, how healthy your vegetables are, how healthy the food you're growing in your garden is, just like your probiotics will determine how healthy you are. You know, if you got good friendly bacteria, they can deal with anything. They wipe everything out. And so I work with the soil in this way. I like to get a very large mineral diversity in the soil, but all locally sourced minerals from old quarries, from river silt, from springs. I'll go there with a bucket and dig out some of the silt that's at the bottom of the spring and fill up the bucket and walk it back to my house. Stuff like that. So I get a very large diversity of minerals, but they're all local. Now what that does, it's like this thing of opposites. You'll have oppositely charged minerals there, like copper and zinc, right, or gold and silver. And that gives you a really healthy soil. And so that's what we've done at my house. We have 31 or 32 different types of rock dusts, local, that have been in that property. We put in over 5 tons of composted soil, soil that's been fed mushrooms, it's, all the goodies into that property. And it's amazing. Actually, one of the oak trees, it's the best oak tree on the property now. That one's gotten a heavy amount of rock dust over the years. It's incredible. I spent a lot of time this summer working around that oak tree and kind of clearing it out because they've become overgrown with small trees. And the soil was black. It was black. And I remember 10 years ago, my friend who brought me the first batch of rock dust up there, he said, you watch what's going to happen to the soil around this tree if you keep doing what you're doing to it. And there I was 10 years later, and he was absolutely right.
Wow. And just teeming with life and energy. Teeming
with life. There was I grow Saskatoon berries, or service berries, and there was a wild one. There was a circle of these young trees like elm trees and maple and birch, and right in the middle of it was a Saskatoon berry.
Huh.
Wild.
Ah.
It was awesome.
Powerful. Okay, so let's talk about the other side of this equation, which is, taking that and, thankfully harvesting it and then taking it, from hand to mouth. And you're obviously one of the, and for anyone who doesn't know, David Wolfe is like kind of the voice of raw food, if you will, and has been an advocate for eating food in its raw form for years. I mean, you've been at this for a while. So then what happens? Okay, so you got the Saskatoon berry, you've got this food that you've now harvested. What's the difference between raw and prepped, and why eat it raw?
Okay, well, one thing is when you grow your own food, you're much more likely to eat it raw. Because you know how much work it took and the overall effort of nature and how many months it took in many cases. So you're going to want to get all the goodness from it. For example, when you grow your own tomatoes, you're not going to want to turn it into tomato paste. You're going to want to actually eat it raw as they are. Now, that right there is because you can feel it. You can taste it. It has more powerful of an effect on you. And raw food is a big deal in terms of like reconnecting the way the planet works naturally. Obviously, we don't do things in the natural order, but most animals don't have a choice. So they follow nature's laws, and one of nature's laws is raw. And so we have to eat some raw food in our diet for vitality. And that's really the summation of my 21 years in the field. You need some raw food in your diet for vitality. There is an energy and a vitality and a vigor that's in raw foods that is not there when the food is cooked.
And that's something that you've been experimenting with for a very long time. And so what is it? I mean, I know you guys have changed a lot of people's lives by turning their diets around. I mean, how long does it take? Does it depend on how sick they are, how far back they are? Like where do you start to see those transitions when you do this?
It really depends on how they're doing it. For example, if somebody has like a NutriBullet and they're able to take their vegetables and just blend it in with fruits and get it already chewed up, so it's already broken down, and then they drink like a green smoothie like that, they're going to have quicker results. If someone's chewing through the food, it's going to take longer because you don't absorb as much chewing, because it's not like NutriBullet's spinning at 22,000 RPM. That's like 22,000 chews in a minute. We're lucky if we chew 5 times.
Yeah, interesting.
So that's part of it. Another part of it is it's the quality, right? So if you are doing homegrown raw food that's organic, it's going to be better for you than just organic you buy from the store, which is not going to be, is going to be better than conventional that you buy in a grocery store. So it depends on the quality of the food. That's another factor.
Sure. And so, if you've farmed it versus someone else is the first, but yeah, then there's this huge scale in farming practices, and that's where you got to be buyer beware for, with what else goes in your food.
Yeah, exactly. And so you're always better off, and there's a huge resurgence of this, as evidenced by your garden that's going in your front yard, in growing our own food again. Huge resurgence happening, and just in time.
Well, yeah, I mean, we gotta take it back. I mean, I'm in California where there's a drought, right? And I walk out there looking at my sprinklers watering this useless plant that's doing nothing other than being aesthetic. And it's really, and I kind of looked into it, and this is old English countryside tradition that came over here. And you know, in old England, it looks that way anyways because it rains a lot. There's no rationale to having a lawn in Southern California and taking a vital resource and feeding something that isn't feeding you back.
Thank you for saying that. I'm so glad someone's saying that, because that is so true, that we need food, not lawns. And everything feeds us about growing our vegetables and our fruits. Everything is food there. It's spiritual food. It's food that you can eat. It's a connection with like an outdoor project. It's basically a workout. It's food in every way.
Yeah, and that's food for the soul too. And so, you know, people are so disconnected, and they're like, I don't even know where to start. You know, you got to start with food, because it's, you know, and you mentioned it very nicely in that the soil is your microbiota, and so our connection with the earth itself is our connection with the bacteria and the food at a primal level, which really dictates who we are genetically and epigenetically and how we roll. Totally.
There's a very strong connection historically between the quality of soils and the quality of civilization.
Huh.
In fact, there's entire books, some of which I've read, that their entire treatise or theory or hypothesis is that once the soil quality is lost, that top soil, the civilization will fall apart.
Interesting. Well, yeah, makes perfect sense. You got to eat. And so we talked a little bit in the movie where you talked about protein and good quality protein. How do we get more protein from plants? Because it's becoming an epidemic, and you know, this meat harvesting is no longer sustainable the way it's going, and it's going to come to a tragic end if we continue to do the same kind of factory farmed meat. And so I know you are a raw food guy, but you're also one of the more practical people I've ever met, and you've got, you know, you've been around the block. So I'd love to hear from you. You know, what is this protein thing, and how can we work around having to slaughter cows in feedlots and stuff?
You've tapped right in on a trend that's occurring right now, which is the word is kind of getting out on the street. You know, it started in the 1930s with Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, his book, that kind of like blew the whistle on factory farms. And then, you know, it's gotten much worse, but there's more people that know. And what's happening is that people want to get more of their protein from plant sources. That is a definite trend that's occurring right now. I really like superfoods to fit that bill. You do need protein. The whole thing, you know, vegetarians say you don't need protein, you know, it's overrated. It's really not. It's actually, you do need protein. A lot of people need protein every 2 to 4 hours just to keep their blood sugar stable. One of the best sources of protein, hemp seed protein. I wish we could be growing that in your front yard.
Yeah, no kidding.
I have grown hemp seed in Canada, and there was something I saw that blew my mind, which is when you thresh it at the end of the season and you get the seeds out, a lot of them are sprouted. A lot of the seeds are already sprouted.
Wow.
I'd never seen that with anything. And you know the whole thing about the raw food is say about, oh, you got to sprout your seeds so they're more active, they're more bioavailable, you get more protein that way. Well, hemp does that naturally.
Wow, that's rare.
Very interesting. So hemp, I'm big into hemp. I really like the microalgae as well. Spirulina, blue-green algae, marine phytoplanktons, chlorella, because there's so much in exactly what we need. They've got the protein, and they've got a super high amount of chlorophyll, which is detox, right? Chlorophyll is the greatest neutralizer of toxins and heavy metals probably there is. And when you're dealing with spirulina or chlorella, you're talking about 12 to 40 times, I'm going to say that again, 12 to 40 times the amount of chlorophyll than is in wheatgrass, for example.
Wow.
So it's really powerful.
Wow. And so what is the chlorophyll doing specifically? You know, that sounds like such a scientific word. I want to make sure our listeners understand that chlorophyll is really, really important in this toxic world that we live in.
Chlorophyll is nature's detoxifier and neutralizer and deodorizer. So one of the things that green pigment does, it neutralizes body odors and bad odors in your body. Great for cleaning the inside. The old phrase is when you're green on the inside, you're clean on the inside. What a great phrase. Another thing is that chlorophyll is a very good heavy metal detoxifier. So in the middle of the whole chlorophyll complex, its whole chemical molecule makeup, the very middle is magnesium. As you digest it, the magnesium comes out and a heavy metal can be pulled in. So let's say you had toxic heavy metals in your body like cadmium. The cadmium will be pulled in and then you actually excrete it. And that's been tested, and that's how it works. So that's also another thing about chlorophyll.
That's fantastic. So, and for you guys that are out there on the scientific end, and you've heard of this thing called chelation. What chelation is using, say, EDTA, DMSA, using a substance that does just that, and creates a ring around the item that we don't want in the body. The body can't recognize, say, the mercury and doesn't know what to do with it. But if you could latch onto it and throw it in a little bubble of chlorophyll or in a bubble of DMSA, then it can shuttle it out of your body and out of harm's way. And that's the future of medicine. I mean, you guys just saw this movie. It's gross. 72 million tons of chemicals into the U.S. every year, and all just this barrage of stuff that these industries don't give a damn about, that's poisoning us and our children. What can we do to stop it? I mean, obviously at the end of the movie we talked about the conscious consumer and how you can vote with your money and choose the products and services that don't poison the planet. But on the other side, look, there's tons of stuff already in the environment, so you need a defensive position. You need chlorophyll. You need superfoods to help you detox and offset the damage we've already done.
That's well said, and that's exactly it. We can't get away with what we used to have when we lived on farms 500 years ago, and we got enough chlorophyll from kale. Kale, by the way, is about 0.2%. 0.2% chlorophyll. That's not that much. That's 1/5 of a percent chlorophyll. 1/5 of a percent. Whereas chlorella is 10%. So it's 50 times higher. 50 times higher. Now that's why chlorella can detoxify you more rapidly. That's why we need chlorella today, whereas 1,000 years ago we didn't really need it.
So where do you see the future of farming, like biodynamic and wild, and given the fact that there's 7 billion people, plus or minus, that are living on this rock, right? How do we go about, because the paleo guys are like, everyone grab a spear and go kill yourself a deer, and it's just so incredibly impractical and unreasonable to assume that we could ever go back to that, right? And so thinking about the future and systems and society and all these things, where do you see that future lying in how we do our food thing?
I think what's happened now is we now have, in the old days, we'd had like a little patch of your garden, that was for the peas, and then there was the cucumbers, and then there was the area for the tomatoes, then you had your squashes over there, then you had your cucumbers and melons. You had little spots for every little thing, right? And then around, you had your apple trees or whatever else you had. What's happened now is that farming and home gardening has taken on another turn, which is growing your own superfoods and growing your own super herbs. So for example, like I grow the great Chinese herbs that I can grow, or the great Ayurvedic herbs that I can grow, that are in my environment that I can grow there. That's not something I would have ever thought about in this 1970s. It wasn't even on the radar, because now it's become like, you don't just grow your own food anymore, you also grow your own medicine. That's the change.
And these superfoods, like let's just talk about ginseng, for instance, which is one of the greatest of the superfoods, right? Talk to us about ginsenosides and how that impacts the body and how that does what it does. Because people think, oh, well, ginseng, that's great, that's good for me. I just got some ginseng leaf tea, so I must be healthy. And so there's such a lack of knowledge about it. Like, to explain ginseng, if you will.
Ginseng is it's an areolaceae plant. So there are many representatives of ginsengs in different environments. So like, for example, where I live, in my forest, we don't have wild ginseng. We have wild spikenard, which is its immediate cousin. It's like its next relative. So that's the one that we use like ginseng. We dig up the roots and we use that in our teas and we chew it and we use it in exactly the same way. But you have to go with whatever representative is in your environment. Now ginsengs are extraordinarily long-lived. They're very unusual. They're a very short, small little shrubby plant that grows in the middle of the forest, like on the forest floor. You wouldn't even notice you're walking by it. You can have 100-year-old ginseng, you're walking right by it, and you'd think it, just sprouted up yesterday. It's tricky like that. There are over 150 ginsenosides that have been discovered in the ginseng plant. and they're modulatory, which means if your immune system's overreacting, they bring it back down. If you're too ramped up or amped up, it calms you back down. But those only really become effective when the ginseng plant is over 7 years old. So in order for the ginsenosides to really set in and start doing what they do, the plant has to be about 7 to 8 years old. When the ginseng plant is between 12 and 13 years old, it actually, because it's in the carrot family, so it would normally die like a carrot. It's not going to keep growing forever. But ginseng's different. It actually has a gene that switches on that will allow it to live on indefinitely. It can live on hundreds of years, and it's believed that ginsengs can actually live thousands of years.
If you can find them.
If you can find them.
Yeah, there are ginseng roots in Asia, in China in particular, that are hundreds of thousands, tens of millions of dollars in some cases because, you know, of what they are. And the more gnarly and the more kind of disrupted their look, the better, because it means the root had a harder time trying to make it. And in doing so, kind of like when, you know, we talk about phytonutrients in the movie and what that meant, is that then the plant was able to secrete more ginsenosides in hard times. And so as the plant had these trials and tribulations, it became a super potent medicine for us. And I find that to be a really poetic and powerful in our understanding of herbology and what this plant went through and what this plant does for you.
Totally right on. There's something that's never talked about in respect to ginseng. It's also true of chaga mushroom as well that I'd like to bring into this conversation.
Please.
And that is almost all the food we're eating is annual plants or annual chicken eggs or annual chickens. They're not old. They're not mature animals or plants. It's very rare that anybody eats anything that's 30 years old. Like a chaga mushroom that's been sitting on a tree for 15 years was also before that 15 years in the tree. So it's been going for 30 years. All of a sudden one day you come and you break that thing off and all of a sudden it's going into your teas. You're making little tinctures out of it. You're having fun with it. That thing's 30 years old.
So you got 30-year-old super sauce coming from a plant, a mushroom in this instance, that has incredible medicinal properties. And I just want to make sure everyone understands the immunomodulatory effect of these plants, because it's so genius that medicine is. I wish our medicine was that good.
Exactly, and what's what I'm saying? It's a characteristic of the top 50 to 60 herbs in the world. Those are the only ones we really need to concern ourselves with. You go to Chinese medicine, you go, boom, give me the top 10. You go to Ayurveda, give me the top 10 there. You go to Amazonian shamanism, I want your top 10. We go to North American, Native American herbalism, well, give me the top 10. When you add it all up, it's about 60 plants that have this dual directional property, which means that if your immune system's too far up, they bring it back down. If your allergic reaction's going out of control, it helps to bring your allergic reaction down or your asthmatic reaction down. So they're able to modulate your metabolism to help you. If you have allergies, like I have, very bad allergies, especially to cats, reishi is amazing for that. So is chaga. I feel so good when I'm drinking chaga tea every day because I can feel that it's not. I can get swung wildly out of balance if my allergies get a little bit out of control. Suddenly it's like an autoimmune reaction. And chaga and reishi help bring it right back in so I don't get swung wildly out of control.
So let's go up a little higher on a bird's eye view and just look at this food meets superfood meets medicinal herbs platform. And within the context of okay, we grew up as hunter-gatherers, we were doing awesome, we invented all these technologies which were cool, but now we've started poisoning ourselves, and now you can see our health diminishing, and everyone's kind of disconnected from that arc of our evolutionary growth. How can we use this knowledge and this wisdom to hack back in there and bring us back to our birthright so we're all feeling great, and do so in a way where it's not, it's not unsustainable, right? We need a sustainable practice to not say like, well, us elite people that can get out and find the chaga mushroom are gonna, do really well, and I'm sorry everyone else is gonna get mulched. How do we bring everyone along on the party? It's a tough question because it's a tough situation.
Ultimately, the answer is education. It's ultimately education. So the ethic, the actual protocol is called ancient, old, brand new. Ancient, old, brand new. That's our way forward. We go to what's ancient, old, and then we look at it again. It's all brand new. For example, the whole earthing phenomenon. We have all this electromagnetic fields around us. It's unbelievable how much stuff's hitting us. I got my little grounding mat right there. So I touch that, and I'm connected to the electricity of the earth, which literally pushes that field off of me, and it pushes it in a way where I'm being hit by 100 times less EMF. All I'm doing is I'm just bringing the earth to me. So it's ancient old. It's the earth. But we're able to use the earth's own natural energies in a new way. That's brand new. It's this type of stuff that's really where the action is, and this to me is really what's exciting. And if you educate people in the right way, they can get excited about it too, and it becomes a lot of fun.
You know what's interesting is you're sitting here in an office at your chocolate production facility up in California somewhere right now. Yeah. And that oak tree, the majestic oak tree with the black soil and the minerals and the richness of what that oak tree carries, also creates a huge bubble of electromagnetic field. I mean, oak is known for that, right? I mean, lightning loves to strike oak for that reason. And so it's a very holy tree in my opinion because of that. And you know, when we do qigong and stuff, we definitely try to find oak trees to be within their fields. You are now somewhere else, and you're in a semi-urban environment or wherever you're at. You're not under your oak tree. So you have your oak tree to go that you've brought with you, which is this modern tech, which is useful and is offsetting some of the poisons, if you will, the energetic poisons at least, that are hitting you in the form of EMFs, which is electromagnetic fields. If you guys are listening and you don't know what an EMF is, we're surrounded by EMFs. Your phone's letting off signals. You know, everything you have in your house, the electricity's letting off signals. And so David Wolfe is sitting here showing us something that helps offset that while he's hanging out inside of a structure and taking less punishment.
Exactly. I mean, basically, there's always a solution. That's a very important understanding. No matter what the problem is, no matter how bad you think the world is or how much pollution's out there or whatever's going on, there's always a solution. And it's actually always coming right with the problem. So as soon as the problem occurs, the solution will be right there. So a very important perspective and attitude is to become solution-oriented. Instead of getting caught up in, oh, woe's me, it's too bad, I can't do this, it's too hard, it's this, it's that. Just be open to grace. Just be open to grace. Be like, the right solution will come to me. You know, if you just have that attitude, and then it will come to you. Amazing. I mean, like on my cell phone. I'll show you one of my cell phones here. This right here has 6 EMF things on it.
Wow.
Now people ask me, like, how do you know which one works? I don't know, but I put them all on there. I hope one of them works.
I'm hedging my bet.
I'm hedging my bet. So, you know, that's how we got to think. You just open to grace. Stuff will be delivered to you. I just use it. And by the way, always keep your cell phone as far away from you as possible. The further you are away from EMF fields or electromagnetic fields, the safer you are.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, it's this whole thing of saying, well, we don't know, we haven't seen the research and all this kind of stuff that you hear in the popular media. It's like, look, our bodies run at a very different frequency pattern. I mean, the Schumann resonance, you know, let's just lock in and say 7 hertz, right, is where our bodies are happy. And we have, I mean, our home phone, I was looking at it the other day, this like cordless home phone, which is like 1.2 gigahertz, just blasting into your parietal lobe just to be like, so what else did he say? You know what I mean? And like you're walking around for an hour with this 1.2 gigahertz right next to your brain, which likes it way slower. Do we know what the fallout is? I don't want to be the guinea pig to find out.
Yeah, this is something that I think we have a mutual friend, Dr. Sarah Gottfried, says. That we're like the crash test dummies for giant chemical corporations and for electromagnetic gadgets. You know, we don't know what the effect of all this stuff is going to be, and so therefore we got to protect ourselves with what we do know. Mm-hmm. The further you are away from it, put on speakerphone and be a foot away or 2 feet away and talk that way. Get as many gadgets on it as you can. I've got what's my favorite? I got an amethyst on this one. It's under there. You know, just get rocks and whatever. Just do what you can, what makes sense. I had a psychic tell me that, so I did it. I don't know if it works, but you know, I'm trying everything. And you just do the best you can.
Well, that's just it. I mean, we're trying. And so this is actually a good segue into the conscious consumer, because let's just say tomorrow some company comes out and says, here's our gadget to block EMFs from your cell phone, and here's the data to support it, and you know, we're ready to go and help you and you know, prevent the cancer or whatever the heck else you'd be getting from this. And you know, we need $300,000 to get this thing started and up to production. That's where my investment dollars go, because most people living in America have these pension funds that are in these big kind of global asset conglomerate things, and you start looking at what companies you're investing in, and it's big oil, big chemicals, big food, all of these big bad guys that are doing the same damage they've been doing. And if you look at who's voting for them, it's America, by giving them their money. So, you know, when someone comes up with that solution, that's the guy I invest in. And if it works out, fantastic. It not only worked out for me financially, it worked out for the world at large, and it could be the next billion-dollar industry, and now I'm rich because I did the right thing. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that and how we can leverage that more and more, because people feel so disempowered and they spend money 10, 20 times a day not realizing that that money is a transfer of power.
Yeah, right, exactly. Now, that's a super important point you're bringing up about the way we use our money and the way we invest our money. For me personally, I have a very good friend who I trust a lot. He's a New Yorker, New York City born and bred, and he's been around all the top stockbrokers, all the top guys, and he's like, look, it's gambling. And when you're gambling, it can go against you. It might go for you, but you're gambling. And I thought, you know what? I'm not a gambler. I don't like gambling. I don't play blackjack. I'm not a gambler. So immediately I took everything off of the stock market. You know, I got rid of all that, and now I invest in people. So that's what I learned, is that now I hire people and I take my chances there. I'll take my money and I'll put it on people. I invest in people. I believe in people. So that's the lesson that I had to learn, even though the program is, oh, no, you need to invest in the stock market. You need to invest 10% of your earnings. You need to invest this or whatever. Nope, I'll invest in people, because there's an asset that's valuable.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You know, we take certain things for granted. It's like, oh, well, this is how capitalism works, and this is where we live, right? And you start to peel the layers off, and you realize that the whole damn thing is a Ponzi scheme. And it's perpetuating a system that is poisoning us and killing us. But anyone who questions that's like a crackpot commie, you know what I mean? And like, I love capitalism, it drives innovation. I just don't like the hegemony of these, you know, kind of dark side elements that are running the economy and doing all the things that they feel like they could get away with because they could control the media. And why would I give them my money?
Yeah, good point. And you got to be careful, because you're voting with your dollars. And you always have voted with your dollars. In fact, we do live in a plutocracy, which is we live in the rule of money. And that's okay, because we can control that. We just take our money and we put it somewhere else, not into that unconscious system or unconscious mess instead of unconsciousness. We work it in a way that's you know, helps people around us. You know, like I just hired 2 people today. And I feel so good about that, because I'm putting my money in a real investment. People.
And you're investing in their families, and you're supporting them, and now they have this thing, you know, in Buddhism we call it right livelihood, you know, where they're doing something that's good for the world, and they're supporting a system that is giving back, and all the wonderful things that we say we adhere to, but then we, you know, pull into the AM PM and buy a Pepsi Cola and, you know, whatever it is, you know, because we're on a road trip and we don't care. And that we don't care is where we stumble. That we don't care is where TV has got us where they want us. That we don't care is us allowing for, you know, crops to be sprayed with things that can kill our children. And so how do we get people to step up after watching this and be like, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And we're going to obviously in the Success Kit have all kinds of tools for you guys. So we're doing everything we can to empower you to be the citizens that you can be of the globe. And I just love to hear from you, David, where you think people need to just kind of draw energy from.
I think people need to be more critical in their thinking and be very, very careful about a very strong human need, which is the need to belong. And our social, we're so social as humans. We're like, that's the biggest fear, actually, is the fear of being expelled from your social group. And so we just need to be a little bit more clear in our thinking and step out a little bit more and not just go with the tide, but actually say, no, I'll go hungry instead of having that plastic water. I'll go thirsty. Now I'm taking a break from whatever. I'm not gonna have the soda pop. I'm just going to eat nothing or drink nothing. Just having that little something inside that does that, and it's like a rebellion a little bit. It's like when I did that when I was a kid, it kind of was a way of taking that youthful rebellion feeling that you have when you're a kid and doing something useful with it. And so me and my friends at that time were like, no, we don't eat that. We don't do that. And so it was like a way of rebelling that was constructive.
That's interesting, because right now you see the youth and they're totally into rebelling, but they're doing so by taking drugs that they probably oughtn't to be taking. They're doing so by getting into behavior that isn't necessarily helping them or the world. They see how messed up the world is and they're rebelling, but they're not doing so in a constructive enough fashion to really move the needle. And I say that with a caveat in that there's a lot, I mean, I think the future is in this generation, this millennial generation that is seeing the light and really starting to change things. But how do we hasten that? Because by the time they're in charge, we've put so much more mercury in the water that, you know, it might be too late. So, you know, we need to intercept that faster.
I like what my friend Ron Finley says. You know, he's a guerrilla planter in Los Angeles, and he plants gardens right on the street. You know, right there, and because they're not being used anyway. It's just like it's not even grass right now. It's so dry in LA, there ain't nothing growing. Yep. And he's turned it into food. And he says basically this is like gangster. Like, you want to be a gangster, you need to start guerrilla planting. So I like the connection between cool and planting, between cool and saving the planet, between cool and actually doing something that's constructive, even though it's totally against the system. It's rebelling against the system, but it's actually a really good thing. I like to make that connection. So, you know, he says planting gardens is gangster.
It is. And what are the OG? I mean, they're stepping up and they're standing for something. And if you take a righteous stand, then you are, you know, you're a man, you're a woman, you're doing something that means something. And we're so devoid of meaning, right? Like, you go out there and forage and find yourself a mushroom or, you know, a root, and that it's just like so powerful and so spiritual in so many ways because you understand the web of life because you've lived it and been a part of that symbiosis. A lot of these kids are completely disconnected, so they're unplugged from that. So we need to help them understand that that's the greatest asset that they need to defend with all they got, and it's their asset. You know, it's borrowed time, man.
Hallelujah. I mean, that's the thing, you know, that I like to say about forests. You know, the great forests of North America, that's the greatest thing left in the world. Like, the Canadian forest is 3 times bigger than the Amazon. I mean, that's a massive, massive statement that I just said. Like, it's really unbelievable, actually, how big the Canadian forest is and how important it is for all life on the planet. It's the greatest resource left on Earth, you know, in terms of like a biological resource. And this is the thing that we need to defend. You know, when I was in Belgium, I did a fast one time. I was in Belgium, and on like the 4th day of this fast, I had to lead a wild food walk in the middle of their only forest, the last forest they have left in Belgium. Wow. 10 million people on that little postage stamp. We go to this forest, and it's all in rows, in 1 acre or 1 hectare plots. It wasn't a forest. It was planted by people in rows, and it was like heart-wrenching. That's all they got. They don't have a forest left. They don't have anything like what you'd see in North America. Nothing like what you'd see in Canada. And so definitely, if you're a North American or anywhere you live in the world, we can't let this go on. I mean, we have got to save our forests. We got to save our natural resources for future generations so they can experience freedom and beauty.
Oh, there's another element to that, and we're almost out of time, but I think we'd be remiss not to talk about this. There's this element of the soil and what the soil looks like under the canopy of a forest. You know, I'm in Orange County, California, where this used to all be oak groves and everything, and then they came and clear-cut all of it to start doing farming, and then they did this, and then they did that, and maybe dump something here. And what happened was now the soil is all this hard clay that's really hard to work with and is devoid of life. And so, you know, these guys are helping me rehab our soil to a state that it would have been in when there was actually trees and leaves and sticks and foliage on the ground. So what does the world look like under the canopy of these forests?
Okay, so what happens is that when you cut trees down, the water table, which is drawn up into the root zone of the trees that are sitting there in that forest, the water table drops down because the sun is suddenly beating on the ground. There used to be shade there. Now all of a sudden the sun's beating on the ground. So the water table will retreat into the earth. And what happens is you start to develop a hardened clay-like surface from the sun. As soon as you put the canopy back up there, for example, like what happened with my oak tree, you know, over all these years, it's developed a full canopy. It's a brilliant, beautiful tree now. When I got in underneath it to get a lot of those weed trees out of there that had just grown in right around it, they came out easily because the pores open up due to the shade. All of a sudden, the earth can breathe and the water table comes back up again. So in places where there's anomaly zones, you can have a spring suddenly. And then all of a sudden you have water for animals. You have water for plants. You have water for fish and other life forms that live there. So we've got to bring the water table up. And the only way to do that is to plant trees because they push the shade up to here. And so all of a sudden, all of this opens up and loosens up. Now, what that soil will look like, due to all the foliage and twigs and everything that's fallen on it over many years of time, is the soil becomes loose and black, which is exactly the best soil for farming. In fact, I was so shocked by this with my oak tree that I got the shovel out and I started shoveling that soil and I started throwing it on my fruit trees.
Oh, yeah.
It was so good.
And so how do you work the canopy versus the sun for your crops once you've created that soil? Where do you, like, I know obviously like in coffee beans and stuff in the jungle, we're getting great coffee that's sustainably produced and, you know, friendly to the natives and all that. But, you know, if I want to grow broccoli, can I do that under a canopy? Like, how does that even work?
The answer is yes. If you're a permaculture farmer, you can do it. Like in Hawaii, we farm with a plant called edible hibiscus. And it's like a miniature tree. And then we've got all our vegetables underneath it. So they're growing in kind of a shaded environment. It's really interesting. And that way we avoid the hard clay pan that can develop when you do kind of monocropping. Right? That's going to destroy soil quality. Now, what you have to do if you're doing that monocropping, you have to constantly till that soil up and around, which happens automatically by moles and voles and earthworms that live under trees in the forest. I almost put my shovel into a mole when I was home this last trip, and I just missed it. I was like, oh, thank God I didn't kill that thing. And so I actually picked it up and held it. And it just digs and it burrows and it turns the soil over for you in a natural environment. So this is the thing I've learned about farming is that the old idea, which is, okay, there's your garden and it's exposed directly to the sun, and there's your orchard and it's just got grass around it, is not really the best way to grow food.
Huh. That is fascinating. So you were like an encyclopedia of all things cool. I can't wait till we're in the same town again so we go foraging and just learn some of this. And I'd love for you next time you're in town to swing by my home garden and lend some of your wisdom, because we're kind of showcasing it for our Victory Garden thing and being like, look, here I am. I'm a dumb urban guy who, you know, decided to do the right thing. And, you know, I'm figuring this out with the rest of our audience because I buy organic food, but growing it, okay. You know, okay, let's go. And you've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, that's I'm so glad you're doing that. And that's how I learned. It's just trial and success method. Not trial and error, trial and success. And so actually, let me tell you how I started, because I think it'd be helpful to people.
Yeah.
I had no idea how to grow anything. I mean, this is what I did. I just got all my food from the organic store, and then I'd eat it, and then all the debris, the compost, I just throw it out in the backyard. And stuff started growing. All of a sudden, I had pomegranates coming up, little mango trees, avocados. I had peppers coming up, melons. I didn't even plant it. I didn't do anything. I just threw it in piles in the back. We had planters and stuff, and I just threw it back there and just thought, well, you know, let's see what happens. So that if you want to do it the real, like, original way, that's a good way to do it. Just create a compost pit, and stuff will grow out of it.
Interesting. That's, you know, to me, it's amazing how life begets life, and we've just forgotten. And so here you are taking stuff that would be refuse and actually putting it into organic matter in your yard and actually having, you know, seeds and whatever's left in there turning into food. And so that's a nice challenge. Maybe I'll take a little plot of my land out here and do just that and see how it grows, because that's, to me, one of the coolest things we could ever explore with our children, right?
For sure. Oh, kids are fascinated by it. It's an instinct. When I was a kid, I was fascinated by it. I mean, I'm very, very lucky that I was exposed to Southern California orchards, citrus orchards, when I was a kid, because that set the stage for the rest of my life. If I hadn't had that exposure as a kid, I would not be the person that I am today. And that's why I feel like for kids today, that is something we have to get them. We have to get them those experiences where the food's coming from, where the orchards are.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have their technology. That's not going away. But they lost the other piece. So if we could get them to grow with both, then they can have a sustainable balance that they can strike, which is the best of both worlds, which is what we're trying to strike here. I mean, no one's saying, you know, get rid of your house and your car here. They're saying, look, you know, this is modern life. And, you know, David Wolfe going over to Belgium, it's a lot easier to take a plane than a steamship. or to go Polynesian style at this point. So, you know, technology helps. But how can we coexist with it so we don't choke out our mother? How can we coexist with it so we don't poison ourselves with the very food that's supposed to nourish us? And that's, you know, that's the question of our generation. And it's the challenge that you and I and everyone in this summit and everyone in the movie and everyone watching this summit and movie need to step up and into. This is our challenge, right? This isn't like, oh, now David and Pedram, go fix it. If you're watching this, pick one thing that resonates with you and just start doing it.
Yep. That's great advice. Like, let's say it's recycling. You know, you get activated on recycling. You never know. There might be someone watching this right now that it's in their heart. It's their mission to do plastics recycling or can recycling or whatever, and take that to the next level. I really feel like the next Steve Jobs of the world are going to be the people who are going to be able to take these resources we've created, plastics, trash, you know, all the stuff we dumped into landfills, and actually make it useful, actually make something useful about, or to create the world's first compostable phone or compostable computer.
Ooh, nice.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. If you're listening, Apple, by iPhone 10, that's what we give you.
The name of that product, by the way, Pedram, is the Cacao Pod. The recyclable computer.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool. Man, David Wolfe, I know you're going to get some wonderful free gifts for our Success Kit people, and we're going to definitely support everything you do. You're a hero out there. Just tell people how they could find you, because you got a lot of things going on. Okay,
probably the best way to track me down, you could get to my website, davidwolfe.com, DAVIDWOLFE.com, or you can catch me on Facebook or Instagram. Instagram's probably the easiest, so it's Instagram.com/David Avocado Wolfe, WOLFE, and avocado is spelled AVOCADO, David Avocado Wolfe.
Awesome. Man, thank you so much for your contribution to all of it. This has been awesome. I always enjoy hanging out with you, and keep doing it, man. I love talking to you because you always have something new and something fresh, and probably because you're connected to nature, right? That's how nature rolls. Like,
absolutely.
You are renewed.
Yeah, stay renewed, stay young, and live in Mother Nature's bosom.
Ah, love it. Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, David Wolfe.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.